This is going to be one of the more complex story explain videos on the channel to date, because Alan Wake 2 isn't just a game that you can simply follow and connect the dots. This is a game where you need to pay your complete attention throughout to understand what's going on, else you could be left at the end of it just thinking, what have I just witnessed and what have I just played? You have to connect the smaller dots that will later become the bigger picture, and this is why the game can be extremely difficult to understand at times. In this video in particular, however, we're going to be delving deeper into the storyline of Alan Wake 2, going from the beginning to the very end and explaining it as we go along. But for the new viewers, we do these types of videos for people that maybe don't want to buy these games and spend the money, haven't got time to play through an 11, 12, 13 hour campaign, or maybe think it won't be their type of game, but are interested in the story nevertheless. Typically, after we do the story explain videos on the channel, we do a full ending explained, along with a couple of other videos that are around the more complex things in the story that people maybe are unsure about or want me to cover. So if you guys want me to cover anything in particular down below, leave them in the comments. I'll be going through them anyway, so I can make a couple of videos based on what you want to hear and what you're maybe confused on. So of course, if that is piquing your interest, make sure you are subscribed to the channel for plenty of Alan Wake and just general content coming over the next couple of months. This video, however, took so long to write, record, edit, so it would be absolutely amazingly appreciated and mean the world to me if you guys could leave a like down below. Let's try and reach 1,000 likes on this video for the release of Alan Wake 2. If we do, I'll give a giveaway of a couple of copies, as we always do on the channel for these story explain videos because they're so big. I also do want to give a quick shout out to our new partnership with Control Freak that we've had on the channel now for a couple of weeks. I've been using these things for absolutely years, and I've got to say, I have them on every single controller that I own. It's way more comfortable to play on the thumbsticks using these things as well, especially if you're like me in intense games like Alan Wake and you get sweaty hands, sweaty fingers, and your thumbs are slipping off the thumbsticks here and there. It's just really useful to have things like Control Freaks on, and they are so useful, and they just make everything much more comfortable as well. And if you're more of an FPS kind of player, like I used to play COD on the channel a lot, these are amazing for FPS and competitive players, and have been proven to increase KD by upwards of 26%. Along with a couple of copies of giving away Alan Wake when we hit the like goal, Control Freak were kind enough to send out a few of their Control Freaks as well, which I'll be pairing in with a few copies of those Alan Wakes that we do essentially give away. And if you want to go ahead and purchase your own, you can go and use the link in the description down below and use code Wizzo for 12% off all of your purchases as well. Thank you all for the support, everyone. But without further ado, let's dive straight into the storyline of Alan Wake 2.
Back to the beginning. We all come to a story with hopes and expectations, looking for an answer. Sometimes it would be better to live with that hope without ever knowing the full story. In a horror story, there are only victims and monsters. And the trick is not to end up as either. But trapped by the genre, we are all ripped to pieces along the way. This is not the story I hoped it would be. This is not the ending I wanted. This story will eat us alive. This story is a monster. And monsters wear many faces.
We start off from the perspective of a man fully naked, washed up on a riverside. Walk further on inland, and all of a sudden, two flashlights start to shine, with one of the people being named Ed. The naked man continues to walk through the forest, with voices muttering and whispering around him, when suddenly, he starts to have visions. ones that paralyze him at the thought. The forest continues to talk to this man. The two lights shined again, and we took a right turn rather than going directly toward them, followed by a bunch of gunshots. Suddenly, this man came across a camp where we were ambushed and shot in the stomach and stabbed multiple times by what can only be described as a cult. This cult, well, we could see that they were harvesting the organs of this man that we were controlling. When two people came across them doing this, and the cult chased them. This, guys, is the start of the storyline to Alan Wake 2. The game begins with a car driving through a winding road in the middle of nowhere, with a mother, Saga Anderson, speaking to her daughter Logan, whilst she's out there working as a detective with her partner, Alex Casey. This wasn't their first murder case in the area, however, with this killer on the loose. This place was called Cauldron Lake, and the case to hunt down a suspected serial killer, as they drank their coffee in sync. A deputy was meant to show and meet them at the crime scene when they arrived, however there was no one to be found. This, ladies and gentlemen, is Chapter 1, Invitation. We eventually ran into the deputy as we made our way into the forest a little bit further, when he and his partner on the radio tells us a bit more around the crime scene, the heart being the big talking point here, with there being also a couple out-of-towners as witnesses too. Anderson, before getting to the case, however, wants to review all the facts so far. So, let's summarise what we know. All of the murders take place in Cauldron Lake by a killer who is currently unknown. All of the known victims so far go by the names of Ted Lane, who was a dentist, Wendy Davis, who was a teacher, and Percy Wolfe, who was a store owner, with all reported to be missing in 2010, with no other commonalities at all. The methods of murder, however, show slight differences here and there. Bloating seems to be a commonality, however, bruising on the legs of the victims and deep gashes in the chest, with the heart missing on this current victim. But this was not the cause of death, however. There seemed to also be an exposure to water post-mortem that caused severe bloating. Finally, a profile on the killer. Post-mortem tattooing on the body, the murder targets have no discernible common traits, and the stab wounds resemble animal butchering techniques. So now we've gone over a couple of the facts that have been found. Let's make our way into the crime scene. Here we see the body and the crime scene, which is the fourth of the Cauldron Lakes murders. This is consistent with the previous murders. The heart missing, bruising on the wrists, stab wounds like before, almost positioned in a ritualistic way. The name of this victim was Robert Nightingale. He was an ex-FBI agent that went off the rails when his partner was killed, resulting in him being fired. He too went missing in 2010, around 13 years ago, just like all of the others did. What was going on in 2010, you asked, that was so specific? Well, that was the year the first Alan Wake game was set. We look around the rest of the crime scene, noticed, one, that there were multiple people here, not just one killer. The victim died here on the table, and he wasn't killed before. The people that were here left in a hurry, knocking over a tripod. Possibly this was going to be recorded? These killers were waiting for Nightingale, but why him? And where did he come from? Here Anderson gets deep with it. This was a ritual for a bigger thing. Nightingale was just a component, a container for something. But why here? Why Cauldron Lake? And why did he originally come from the lake as well? Anderson and Casey make their way over to the lake itself and investigate. Along the way, though, we find tracks, possibly Nightingale's, and then a piece of paper on the ground. Written on it with a typewriter, a message potentially left by the killer? As they both read this letter, it's about Agent Casey and Agent Anderson. Someone's been watching them, or so it seems. In the background as Anderson was reading the manuscript, however, we hear the voice of a man. Who they are? Don't know just yet, but it's interesting. As Anderson ponders over this letter a little more, it becomes clear that something was put inside of Nightingale's chest. But what? The page was written almost like a story. Anderson and Casey found a series of clues along their way, however, but the main being this manuscript. They then make their way away from Cauldron Lake to a place called Bright Falls. They were led here by a few clues and decided to meet the sheriff and a few of these witnesses to build a bit more towards their case. We make our way to a local diner where we meet our two witnesses. These were the two from the very start of the game, where we mentioned there was someone called Ed that we overheard and his colleague Tammy. We asked them both what they were doing here at Cauldron Lake. Tammy is a writer for true crime, and they're visiting to write a story on the famous novelist Alan Wake's disappearance. We also asked what they saw. A naked dude coming from the lake, screaming weird things at them. They heard the gunshots and the people with deer masks opening up Nightingale, shouting, "Cult of the Tree." But then, just as Ed was about to tell us a specific piece of information, Tammy stops him, and a figure appears in the background of the screen. He then ends the story. Tammy found a necklace belonging to one of the cultists, and they broke him for the sake of the book. We confront Tammy about the necklace, and she hands it straight over to Saga. However, just as Saga Anderson goes to leave this cafe, the waitress recognises her, stating that she's surprised to see her back after what happened to a baby girl. Anderson has no clue what she was talking about or who she was, but when she tries to remind her of her name, which was Rose, still no idea, with Anderson confused as to what happened to a baby girl. Rose tells her that Logan drowned. Anderson had no idea who this lady Rose was, but how did she know that she had a daughter? She must have surely mistaken it for someone else. We ask her a couple more questions, and there soon is apparently going to be a festival in Bright Falls called Deer Fest, so everyone will also be wearing deer masks. Anyway, we meet back up with the sheriff outside, where we ask him about the Cult of the Tree. This apparently was an urban legend, like if you're caught outside in the woods at night, the cult will get you sort of thing. Anyway, we make our way down into the basement, where we find the morgue, and inspect the body and the organs. As we were inspecting it, the heart had writing on it. The body was completely submerged in water, causing the bloating. There was a tattoo on the body, defensive wounds where he put up a fight. And what's this? Something inside of his chest. Saga goes in with a pair of tweezers, and when she pulls out something, she was shocked. It was another page, like the one they found at Cauldron Lake, written by Alan Wake. It was at this point that the sheriff mentioned that he'd also found a series of these pages. He didn't think they'd be relevant to this case, but when he went to grab the pages, the sheriff disappeared, the lights gone out, the body of Nightingale, it sat up and killed one of the officers. These pages, however, were almost helping Anderson. They told her to step into the light where Nightingale wouldn't be able to see her. These things? What are they? Anderson makes her way into the hallway to retrieve her weapon and her flashlight as well. However, when she shot Nightingale,
vanished.
Once Nightingale disappeared, Saga had a bit of time to collect herself again. This page, the one inside Nightingale's chest, it helped fight against this thing. No heart, yet he still got up, he was still active. What does all of this mean? The Cult of the Tree is performing rituals to create these monsters. We need to find out more around these rituals, more around the cult, what they want, and their purpose in all of this. There was another page on the ground. This one would tell Saga Anderson their next move, back at Cauldron Lake, that they need to stop these monsters. The page goes on to tell her what they need to do, going into detail about a place called the Overlap. This place and the Dark Place were merged into one, which was called the Overlap. When I refer to it as this place, I mean the current world that Saga Anderson is in at this moment. The Overlap essentially is another realm. Let's just put it in that sense. And of course, the Overlap is where the current world and the other realm meet, and that's where you can go in between one another, just to make a bit more sense. Saga Anderson needs to pursue Nightingale in the Overlap. Figuring out how to get into this place would be a challenge, requiring potentially a ritual to do so. We must stop the monster before it kills again. We leave the building in case he gets on the phone to call for some backup and make his way back to Cauldron Lake. However, it was during the car journey that Casey comes clean about the real reason behind him being there. He was chasing a writer, Alan Wake. In Alan's writing in his previous novels, he had a character in all of his stories, a detective that went by the name of Alex Casey, the same name as Casey in this game, the one who's speaking right now. This seemed all a coincidence, until 10 years ago. Casey started getting strange letters in the mail, fragments of prose describing murders. It turns out, these fragments being sent to Alex were from the exact murders described in Alan Wake's novels, and that a cult was copycatting the murders directly from the books. They were trying to perform these rituals to bring Alan Wake back, but no one knew where he went. This is where we meet Chapter 2, The Heart. As they made their way through the forest, things became a little bit more tense. As soon as the sheriff picked up the papers, the pages they'd found, he disappeared. Something didn't want him to have those pages, to give them to us. We need to find this place called the Overlap, and as we explored the area, I think we may have found it. Just outside of the Overlap, there was another page, this time telling us of a place called the Witch's Hut. This tells us how to get into the Overlap. We need to read the writing that's been imprinted on Nightingale's heart, along with the pages to the witch's ladle sign, a sign that we'd found along the way exploring through the forest. Then, once we have the heart, we push it through the hole, and it should reveal the Overlap. So, Saga obtains the heart, pushes it through the sign, and well, something happens. Anderson cautiously makes her way into the Overlap. Unable to communicate with her partner on the other side, all communications were dead. Anderson carries on through the forest, seeing flashes of places from within the forest that didn't seem like they were actually there, with something in the distance saying the writer was writing again. Nightingale, he's here. Then, another letter. Anderson makes her way through a cave, when again they hear someone talking, almost like they're trying to communicate with her, but the signal isn't great. Along the way we find Nightingale's badge, and what looked like an underground railway station popping in and out of view. And suddenly, there he is, Nightingale. Saga fends him off as well as she could, using the light to her advantage, but suddenly she was grabbed around the throat by him before he disappeared. This would continue on for a couple of rounds until Nightingale was defeated. Saga, however, came into contact with someone after this fight. Is this Alan Wake?
Who are you?
What is this? Who are you?
Hear me.
I'm Saga Anderson, FBI. I can hear you.
Cauldron Lake.
Yes, I'm at Cauldron Lake. Where are you?
How to escape. In danger. The dark presence.
Saga woke back up on the lakeside, where she found a body with a note next to it. This man was the man from the vision. This man was Alan Wake. We radio to Casey, tell him what's going on and who we've found. However, when we woke Alan Wake, he was exclaiming that someone changed the story, rewrote it. But who? And what story is he talking about? All of Wake's stories were coming to life apparently. The PI from his books has the same name as the two FBI agents, Saga and Alex. Here Alan tells us about the pages and how vital they are, even life-saving. Saga searches the nearby forest, and there on the bench is another page. Here, Alan would go on to tell us that the overlap worked. The place that we just were, that we fought Nightingale, was called the Dark Place. Why? Well, because as we've seen with Nightingale, these things thrive in the dark, and the light will kill them, and they can't see us when there is light. An overlap of the Dark Place and reality needed a push from both directions to manifest itself. The murder of these people were all done in and around the overlap in order to establish a connection to the other side. Like Nightingale wasn't this beast before the ritual, a sacrifice to the other side. Saga and Alex made their way back to Bright Falls with Alan Wake. They allowed him to freshen up a little bit before they had a bit of a more of a detailed conversation with him. In the car, however, Saga called her husband and daughter, where an accident had happened. Nothing serious, however, but it made me think back to the meeting with Rose in Bright Falls. Logan tripping and almost drowning in the bath. And when we met Rose, she gave her condolences to Saga for losing her daughter whilst she drowned. Obviously she's not dead right now, there was no major accident there, but it was a close call. Interesting. Anyway, we return to the lodge and both Alex and Saga, in sync, drinking their coffees, ready to speak with Alan. We ask if there's anyone that we should call. However, he says no, because it will come for him. Alan knows Nightingale, knew him 13 years ago, and was taken by the darkness. When he found Alan, he had a title page with him, what that looked like the first of this overall story, with the writer's name violently scratched out. But Alan can be made out underneath. However, suddenly Alan begins to remember. He was sat on a sofa ready to go on air and give a live interview, ready to talk about his latest book. Alan walks out on stage. This was sick, by the way. I love how they've included real life acting into this story in this game. Alan's first book, Departure, was published, and the quote, "It's not a lake, it's an ocean," was the one that stood out the most. But to Alan's surprise, he was publishing another book, tomorrow. This was called Initiation. He was stunned, shocked even. He wrote and published no book. Where was he? Well, just take a listen to this.
An auto-fictional thought experiment? A horror story? A postmodern detective story?
Wait. This isn't right. I haven't written anything.
He's so humble.
Okay, you got me. Good prank, very funny. But yeah, sad to say, I've not written this. I'd remember if I'd written a book, right?
Or maybe it was written by your evil double. Well played, man! That is spot on! Playing the role here. Pretending the world of the book overlaps our own. That's very meta indeed. You see, Initiation tells the story of a fictional writer named Alan Wake, who is trapped in a nightmare, desperately trying to find the manuscript of a novel he has forgotten he has written. The book is set in New York, but it might not be New York at all. He is tormented by his dark doppelganger and guided by visions of a fictional detective he has written. That's right, Alex Casey is in this book as well. I found the structure of the reality you build in the book fascinating. It reminded me of The Matrix. I mean, the writer is physically in his writer's room, trapped there, and he projects himself out to this dark dream of New York through the story he is writing. Like astral projection. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Go on. I should be taking notes here. This is great stuff.
Notes to that other Alan Wake in that room writing this as we speak? Are we all in your story, Alan? Wow. No, I wish you every success with your new book, Alan. I hope it's as successful as your best-selling Alex Casey series. Initiation hits the shelves tomorrow. After this, I'm sure we'll all be eagerly awaiting the culmination of this hero's journey trilogy of yours. A book called Return, perhaps. Man, thank you for one of the strangest interviews of my entire career, Alan.
Alan woke a short time later to a dark studio. Something wasn't right here. Alan needed to get home to his wife Alice, so he made his way through the studio. However, once Alan got back to his backstage room, it dawned on him. He's never heard of this talk show, or anyone called Mr. Door. This was all so confusing, something he had no idea about. There was something here, a broken transmission that he couldn't quite make out, but on the screen was Alan, writing in a room. As he carried on making his way through, things continued happening. There was something here, something chasing Alan, hunting him down, until finally, it caught up with him.
This is the ritual to lead you on.
Alan woke a short time later, in that same room that he saw on the TV. He knew what this room was. It felt familiar, like he's wrote here for several days. Here there was also a huge blackboard, all with writing all over it. Alan felt like this was a familiar place, but he couldn't remember why. And this wasn't the first time that this had happened either. His thoughts could manifest themselves and get them outside of this room. Alan would write himself out of the situation, leaving notes, taking him back to that moment. Alan was suddenly back on stage being interviewed, with Alex Casey sitting beside him. Alan mentioned how he wished that he was more involved in the making of the story, but then a bombshell hit. Not only was there a second book, but there was also a movie made about Alex Casey hunting down and finding the writer. There were key elements to this story relating to a writer, a lamp shaped like an angel, and Alan again woke in the middle of a studio and made his way through just like before, but this time the final door opened, and on the other side, someone's there. Alan opens up one of the doors and is greeted with a janitor, where we speak with him. We ask for instructions on how to get out of here. He tells us that there's something in the basement in a shoebox just for Alan. When we reach the basement, there it is, a lamp shaped like an angel, just like the description in the movie. When Alan picked up the lamp, there was a magnetic pull between it and the light above. When he directed the lamp at the light, it transferred the light into the lamp. This was especially weird because it took him to a place completely different, one that looked like it was from another world. This was especially interesting, as the light in the lamp was able to carve out new things in front of Alan, transferring the light from the lamp into the light above him. It opened a new doorway, revealing a new room and a way through. Alan, however, would make his way upstairs and hear the groan of a man before walking into an empty room with a TV in. The darkness wants to drown him. He's losing himself. He has to fight it. He has to remember. The dark place was a nightmare. It wasn't real. He had to keep writing this story, telling it to remind himself of what's going on here. The darkness is trying to drown him. Alan snaps back into it and finally exits the talk show building. He's made it out. As he gets outside though, he can hear a phone ringing. Somehow, he knew it was for him. Alan answered the phone, and on the other side was a voice. They didn't give us a name, but they did explain that there were spies everywhere in the shadows. Alan was sure that he had this conversation before, with the voice saying he's just forgotten this again. He needed to make his way to the subway, with Alan finding a subway pass on the ground, almost like this is something that he's already done before. On Alan's way, however, he came across Alex Casey, who was investigating a murder, and here he retells the story from earlier. He was sent a series of things from the murders described in a book written by Alan Wake, so it begged the question, was Wake the leader of the cult responsible for these murders? Suddenly, however, the light went out around the corner, and Alex went to investigate, with Wake stood watching. He was taken by something. Walk around the corner, and Alex was lay on the wall, mauled by something, with Casey saying,
What? You think you know? You know shit. You don't really want to know. You're gonna get what's coming to you.
He picked up the flashlight, and made our way into the subway entrance. Alan finally reached the station, and when he transferred the light, it completely changed the look of it. The ticket from earlier, well, it worked. He was able to move through with no problem. Something lingered here though, something significant. A half-forgotten memory, an echo. Here we see a vision, one from the fictional detective Alex Casey. This can get quite complex, but I'll try to explain as much as I can. The way down here was blocked, so Alan had to rewrite what happened, resulting in the dark place to react to it, creating a path deeper into the dark place. Basically, Alan has the ability to rewrite whatever's going on in the dark place using pictures and pieces of art, which is what we can see doing right here. He's using a piece of art which shows the path not blocked, so you can do that, and that's essentially how it works. Alan ventured further into the dark place when he would see visions, horrifying ones, sounds coming from different areas of the underground. Alan was following the case of the missing FBI agent until he came across what looked to be a dead end. As Alan changed the story, the dark place changed as well. The agent came looking for answers. They came looking for the cult, but that was his search ended, with two people stating that their leader was Alan Wake. Alan made his way through to another room where he used his lamp to capture the light and change the course of the tunnel. It turns out that these tunnels were all used by this cult, and anyone down here would reenact the murders in Alan Wake's books. Everyone wondering what Alan's involvement in this was, and why would a cult want to reenact the murders of his book that he's never written? Alan came across a train that blocked the path, so he rewrote this in a way to allow him to traverse through. The cult poured gasoline on the train cart. This would become an iron coffin for those inside. And there, another vision. Dark smoke from the fires still linger in the tunnels, trying to take more victims as they come through. Alan could use this. Alan wrote about the torchbearers in order for him to get through the train, the doors to open. Writing of Alan's books, the story that he's writing, isn't only for him to remember, but it's also acted as the stories being published. These murders within these books, they were what Alan could already see in the dark place. He's writing them in a way so that he can make it through and escape, not knowing that in fact that they are coming true. As we go through the train, as we make our way through the train, we can hear the victims burning as Alan crawled through. Alan made it into a larger room, one that which looked very much like the cults were based there. This had pages upon pages upon pages, all pinned to a wooden board, many lines scratched out, until we find another vision. This vision was Alex speaking again, telling us that the ritual is the key to finding the murder site. And well, we hear someone doing exactly that. The cults, however, weren't the only ones that were using the tunnels. There were a series of mythic outsiders with hidden knowledge down here too. After a series of clues, we were able to rewrite the story of the collapsed tunnel. When we did, an altar appeared. However, suddenly, the dark presence was there as well, trying to stop Alan and chase after him, capture and drown him. He sprinted for his life and got into a light-filled room, where he was safe for now. The tunnel, however, was opened, the dark presence not letting us breathe, so Alan sprinted straight past it and into the tunnel, but the tunnel behind him collapsed. Alan made his way through a narrow cave before coming into a huge room with a bunch of huge pillars either side. In the centre of the room was an altar of some sort, with the vision of a tree. This was the murder site from Cauldron Lake. How was Alan seeing this here? And, as we'd seen before, Saga was stood there.
An overwhelming closeness to home. An FBI agent? Who are you?
What is this? Who are you?
She can hear me.
I'm Saga Anderson, FBI.
This is Alan Wake. I'm trapped here. The dark place. Under Cauldron Lake.
Cauldron Lake. Who are you?
I'm trying to escape. I'm making progress, but I'm in danger. The dark presence. Help me. Please, help me.
I could sense it. I was closer to home. Had the woman in the vision helped me somehow? Something had changed. Outside. Parliament Tower. Where I'd lived with Alice. It was out there. Waiting for me.
Something, however, changed. The darkness would be waiting for Alan. Alan continued to try and find his way out, and here he sees a recording. Art is the way out. Dark energy can make things a reality, so the use of art will allow him to navigate his way out of the dark place. Alan left the subway and the payphone again started ringing as soon as he got outside. This person on the other side, he's happy we reached the overlap, the murder scene. However, he asked about Alan's wife, Alice. Did he ever check if she'd gotten out alive? Alan was convinced that she did, but then the voice said something interesting. Darkness. It can possess as Alan's double, almost impersonate Alan. So, she could have thought that she was leaving with him, but in reality, it was the darkness. Alan, however, becomes worried at this point. Our next objective is to ensure that Alice is out and safe. Alan enters the Parliament building, which was where their apartment was based, and looks into a vision. It mentioned Alice, her art, but it was all a part of the story, even hearing Alice's voice inside one of the rooms. But as Alan walked inside, pictures of him on the bed. He searched the apartment and came across a memory card, so he placed it into a camera and watched its contents. Alice was talking, saying that things with Alan became complicated when he hit a block, bringing out a meaner side of him. Alice booked an appointment for a doctor. He didn't know. And as soon as they got there, they argued like crazy and, well, he just was gone, drowned, and never come back. Alice then went on to say that 6 years ago she would hear noises in the night, typewriters clicking, haunting her. This thing, well, it eventually became violent. This was Alan, but yet it was a monster. Alice then decided to set up cameras with motion sensors around the house, capturing her nightmares on film. These are the pictures on her bed. This is a part of her new exhibition called The Dark Place. The beast haunting her, Alan refers to it as Scratch. Alan delves deeper into the exhibition. The book, Initiation, was only written to try and eject Alan from the dark place to find a way out. The story looped its way around. He was back in the writer's room with a bullet wound in his forehead. darkness approached and took Alan. For those that need a summary of what we've just heard, Saga does a pretty good job of explaining this right now.
Okay, let's recap what you've told us so far, Alan. For the past 13 years, you've been trapped in a nightmare dimension called the Dark Place. It's like New York, but it's not New York. And can be reached from the bottom of Cauldron Lake, but it's not really under the lake. And after all this time, you've managed to get out.
Yeah.
But so has your evil doppelganger. Mr. Scratch? Or is it the Dark Presence?
Both. It's interchangeable. He's Scratch when he looks like me, but he can change into this other form.
And Scratch, the Dark Presence, wants to rewrite the world in his own image.
Which would be in your image, as he looks just like you.
And turn the world into a fucking nightmare.
During Deerfest, which is scheduled to take place in a couple of days.
I hope that made sense to at least a couple of people. We tell Alan about the cult and describe it to him as he's adamant that they have the clicker, that the cultists are working for Scratch. Saga thinks into how Alan might know. The writer is the reader. Wake's hiding pages from his book. Is he hiding them from Scratch? Saga confronts Wake around missing pages, and he agrees to hand them over. Saga takes a look, and it tells her about how the next set of events unfold. Cultists have the clicker, so that's the goal. Saga, however, finds another page, this one detailing the arrival of someone called Tammy, the journalist from earlier on. She arrived in town the same way that Alan did, and this researching wasn't as easy as she thought, with the incident at the lake and the fight she'd had with Ed afterwards being a bit traumatic. It was all coming together in the story, just as it's played out in reality. Saga made her way to a place called Watery, looking for the cult and hunting them down. Saga, however, made her way inside one of the buildings and switched reality. Suddenly, Wake woken up in the chair, almost like nothing had happened. Wake needed to write a new draft, one right back at the beginning, but closer to his goal. So he sat down to write a new story, one that would allow him to reach Parliament Tower using a different murder site. However, in this draft, we can save Alice. However, when Alan Wake woke, he was again in the studio, but this time he remembered he could control how all of this played out by just simply rewriting it. But as we entered into the consciousness of ourselves through the TV, well, we were smack bang in the centre of a musical.
What the hell?
From what I've gathered, you grew up nice and sheltered with mama's pretty stories and your own made-up fury.
And mama gave me a magic clicker. Well, yes, I think it's true and fair to say.
So you were drawn to stories early on.
My dreams would light up my imagination.
And you had nightmares night and day.
Yeah, but with the clicker, I chased those frights away.
Who knew? So true.
So here is a clue of hope to remember. Visions that come true. Abandon the lights with
And all your stories of crime and chilling thrillers of hard-boiled killers became bestsellers.
The story's the end, all a piece of true fiction. Meaningless in the face of creation.
Honestly, I would love to just sit here and play the entire thing for you, but Jesus, this went on for so long in the story. And just when we thought it was over, we're on a ferry going into Bright Falls with even more singing.
He could write a new story like Tom Zane before him, and maybe they'd be happy once again. Just one shot, one more chance for him to save their marriage away from the city, a romantic getaway.
Okay, I think this one might be it now.
Still he's a torchbearer, and it couldn't be much clearer. A war needs its warrior, true and right. The darkness within him held her hostage. Had he seen her drowning, would have saved her from the darkness of the lake.
Okay, I think this one might be it now. Alan wakes up in the back room, and is this it? Okay, I think the singing's over. Oh
Such a
no.
dark place, am I trapped in here? Is this real? I cannot remember. There was a manuscript, it held a key. A vicious cycle I must not surrender to. Echo scenes to seek out again and again until I figure it out to bring this song to its end.
It turns out we had to figure out a way out of this and bring the song to an end. And finally, it's still carrying on. I'm in a damn nightmare here. Alan wakes and makes his way through the studio, where he's faced with another pool of liquid. Alan switches reality, and here, thank God, we are back to the perspective of Saga. Saga made her way through Watery to find clues that would reveal the answers crossed out of the story by Scratch. Throughout, Saga hears reports of a trailer. Not sure what the significance of that was, but they finally find a key. This was the key to a trailer owned by the family called the Anderson trailer, which would be significant because, of course, Saga's last name is Anderson. But more on this a bit later. Saga comes across two elderly drunks. They both knew Saga by the first name, and they knew about the stories. We entered this trailer, and then we see a picture, the two elderly men and a member of the cult, one with the clicker in hand. However, underneath the picture, a newspaper containing a picture of Saga's daughter Logan that she drowned, just like Rose said was in the story. She tried her best to reach her husband and kid on the phone, but no answer, and suddenly in front of her was Mulligan, the deputy from earlier that disappeared.
Mulligan? What the fuck?
We follow Mulligan into a nearby motorcycle club and came across a basement. We go inside and there a room, and at the top was an altar. The clicker was there, or so Saga thought. When she reached out to grab it, it disappeared. Anderson found another note, and on there it tells her exactly what's going on. Mulligan and Thornton are like Nightingale inside the overlap, waiting for her. This whole thing was a trap, leading Saga down here. Saga kills one of the Taken above ground and needs to search for a parade float, which was some information given to her by Alan Wake earlier on in the story. Saga needed a couple of props to add to the float in order to open the overlap. Once they were found, Saga made her way down into the well and into an underground section. The goal was to obtain the clicker. Saga, however, starts to see visions of Alan on the other side, trapped. What that means, we have no clue right now. But then, another vision.
Saga Anderson, listen.
Wake?
I've been tricked. Scratch wrote. I tried to fix the story, but has it now. It's the key to escape.
What do you mean, escape? You're already out. So is Scratch.
We're making progress. I wrote to be the story's hero. Save her family. Save us all.
Save her family? Are you talking about my family?
Yes, you know it's working. You just need to keep going.
Did you put my family in the horror story? I keep seeing him in overlaps, but he's already out.
Wake tells Saga that he's been tricked, that he needs to fix the story, but again, Saga can't understand him properly because it's almost like a bad connection. He's breaking up constantly, but he knows the key to escape and where it is. But isn't Wake already out of the overlap? How is he still there? Wake, however, purposely rewrote the story and put Saga as the main character, the one to uncover all of these secrets, which is exactly what she's doing. However, Wake also did mention something else. He involved Saga's family in the story as well, and it's now her job to save them. But going back to the first question, how is Alan Wake still in the dark place when he was washed up on the beachfront at the beginning of the game? Are these visions potentially coming from the past? Saga now has the clicker, which means that she's now on the road to stop this nightmare. Wake said that he could use the clicker to undo this horror story, so Saga makes her way back to Bright Falls, where she can speak with Wake and Casey. However, back at the lodge, something starts to happen. The cultists find out where Wake was, with him and Alex being completely unaware of this at the time. With Alan's head suddenly starting to ache like crazy. Casey, however, thought that Alan got a kick out of writing these stories, adamant that he was not his toy, and that this was not his playground. Alan now knows how dangerous his writing really is, how many people that he's put in danger because of these stories. So he stopped writing completely, but before he could continue on, the cult came for him. Alex goes off to open one of the doors to fend off the cult, however Alan could sense that Scratch was close. His head absolutely pounding.
Casey! Look out! It's coming!
Alan wakes a short time later, covered in blood, but it wasn't his blood. He looks around to try and figure out what's going on and where he is, with the deer head covered in remains. Gunshots are still going on outside. However, as we look around, cultists are dead all around the room. Was this Scratch? Why didn't he kill Wake? Wake runs outside and can hear Casey shouting, so he picks up a gun and a flashlight left by one of the cultists, and he went on. However, in the background, we could hear something, almost like a loud roar. It was Scratch. Somehow Casey made it out alive, but it wasn't over yet. Scratch's presence was getting bigger and stronger, with the headache completely knocking Wake out. However, Saga approached Wake, but so did a cultist. When Saga shot the knife out of his hand,
Saga, you don't understand!
However, suddenly, the Federal Bureau of Control came in on a helicopter, people swarming around Wake, stating that they're now taking over Saga's case. But Saga chooses not to tell them about the clicker. She can't trust them with it just yet. What if this is all a front? What if they're also working with the cultists? She could not take that chance. So Saga reluctantly handed over her case, but she wasn't going home just yet. However, there were two people that might know how to use the clicker, Tor and Odin from earlier. So Saga's plan was to ask them how it worked. However, before we do this, we visit the dark place and control Wake and answer the phone. Alan still has no clue who this person on the other side was, and they still seem surprised that Alan doesn't know. We need to make our way to a place called Ocean View Hotel, and it's here that we meet the person we've been speaking to on the phone this whole time. Along the way, however, we walk down a similar alley from earlier, the one where Casey was mauled, and there he is again. However, before we could do anything, a gunshot, and it was not from Casey. Alan had a gun in his right hand and shot Alex Casey in the stomach. He was laid there, dying, as Alan watched over. Here we heard Alex talking, saying he was a vessel for the dark place, but now it was all over. He and the writer were the same. However, Alan couldn't waste any more time. He needed to get to Ocean View Hotel to have this meeting with this unknown person. When Wake made it inside, there was an old school projector sat there. We turned it on and crossed our fingers it's not another musical. Luckily it wasn't, and inside we meet a man called Tom Zane. He was a filmmaker, one that looked exactly like Wake.
It's returned, but because we returned.
Does anybody else feel like they're on acid playing this game? Alan had enough of these visions. He wanted answers and wanted answers now. He needed to find the third manuscript. There was a murder site somewhere in this hotel that Alan could use to maneuver himself around the dark place and find the third manuscript. Here we see chairs placed in a circle, the cultist logo on the floor. This ritual was haunted. A cult once did this very ritual and summoned it within this ballroom. The people performing it didn't actually think they'd be summoning anything evil. It was a play, right? However, when they did the ritual, all of that changed. We heard another vision saying that Scratch was in fact cast to play the role of the writer, the devil. He would rewrite history whilst God was asleep, and well, it turns out he was perfect for the role. But we're still searching for the ritual murder site, so upstairs we go and Alex is asking more about Mr. Scratch. Alex got a room number from Scratch. Of course, it was room number 666. He never mingled with the other cast members. He only ever came out for the play and was always in character. Wake enters this room and he could immediately sense Scratch's presence. We hear Alex and this guy speaking again. The lead lady died during the cast, staying in her room 108. This lady, however, insisted that she'd seen the original version of the script. However, it turned out that Scratch only joined the play to get to her, because of course, she's seen the original version and that's of course what Scratch is after. Then, suddenly, Scratch comes out of nowhere and tried to come after Alan. He sprinted his way through the halls and finally made it to the light room. But Alan has what he needs. Room 108 was where the murder happened. However, when we got closer, we see another vision, whereby two people were trying to cover up the evidence of the murder by dumping it all into the alley. Why? We don't know just yet. However, we finally enter the murder site, the bathtub where she was killed. When Alan went to place his hand closer, the body disappeared and he could see into the overlap, and there was Saga on the other side.
Closer than ever before. It's you again. The FBI agent. Saga Anderson. I'm closer now. I can feel it. You helped me get closer to escaping.
Wake? Are we still trapped? Yeah, the clicker. We can...
You know about the clicker? It can help us. I destroyed the dark presence with it last time. You can help. You can find it. You must find it.
I can get it to you. I have to understand. Did you write the story?
Alice is in danger. I have to stop Scratch. I have to find a return. I need to get back to my apartment. I'm writing a story to get through. Initiation. It's the only way.
The story. You can do that. You can write out.
It lasted only for a moment, like two planets passing in orbit. Saga Anderson was helping me go deeper, closer to escape. Somehow, I had to trust her. Parliament Tower. I had to get back to my apartment, my study. I had to find the manuscript of Return.
Here we tell Saga we're closer now, but like we heard earlier from Saga's presence, she knows about the clicker. But Wake's already in reality, so how is he here too? Wake is adamant that he can destroy the dark presence with the clicker, and he needs Saga to help find it. Alan is trying to get back to his apartment, and to do that he needs to rewrite the second manuscript, Initiation, to maneuver his way into the apartment. Wake needs to go back to his apartment and his study, and that's where the third manuscript is essentially being held. So, Wake finally returns to his apartment after a long, tedious journey, and when he's greeted with a series of cameras powered by a motion sensor as he opens the door. As we make our way inside, we can see that the bathroom was made into a darkroom by Alice, one with pictures of someone captured by the cameras. We search the apartment and can see her work has consumed the entire apartment. Throughout were a series of video messages left by Alex, one telling us that a new friend Barry was there for her after the death of Alan, another telling us how she managed to get herself out of a rut of being depressed after Alan's death, and then the third, that there's something in the dark that she needs to find out for herself, with a picture of that exact thing on the wall in the hallway. The fourth video, however, is Alex confident there's a world behind ours. Alice felt like it was her job to prove that those faces behind the dark were really there. We entered into the writing room once more, walked towards the desk. On the desk was a series of pages, and this was it, the full manuscript of Return. This was a story about the dark presence escaping the dark place, taking over Bright Falls. However, Alan didn't write this. This was written entirely by Scratch. People would die because of this manuscript if that story came true. So Alan had to edit it, amend the story, and change it in a way that would suit everyone. A way that would prevent death, ultimately defeat Scratch and the cultist group. Alan scratched out his name, and he made Saga Anderson the main character of the story, the hero. She wasn't in it before, but once Alan started changing the story, he put her and her family at the forefront, to try and stop Scratch within the limits of the horror story. However, before we could reach the end, Scratch had found Alan and put a bullet in Alan Wake's head. Scratch was able to stop Wake before he could finish all of the amendments. But Alan needed to get back to the Parliament Tower to take the draft to return and finish it with all of his changes. Alan decided to rewrite the second manuscript initiation throughout the entirety of this game to try and make his way back to the Parliament Tower. Scratch and the Dark Place were preventing him from getting in, but if Alan would rewrite the second manuscript in a certain way to allow him back into the tower, then he could get to the third manuscript. However, before Alan knows it, he's back in the studio. Here we see the host, Mr. Door, sat in the distance. When he gets up and approaches, he tells Wake that now he knows. We can stop playing games and get to the point with what this really all means. Wake finds himself in the basement of the studio again, looking at two pictures, one being the clicker and the other light in the shape of a bullet, both taken by Alice. Alan makes his way back to the apartment building, where he goes into the lift to pay our friend Zane a visit. We approach the projector again, and there Alan's pointing a gun at Zane's head. Here we tell Zane that he lied, we didn't write return, Scratch did. But then Zane tells Alan that he gave up, he stopped writing. Scratch promised to write and get Zane out of this place. Zane was on Scratch's side by the set sounds of things. However, when Scratch wrote return, he didn't add Zane into it in the final copy, meaning that Zane is stuck in the Dark Place. However, something then started happening to Zane. Zane started trying to take over Alan's mind, but Alan wasn't taking any chances, so he shot Zane in the middle of the forehead. Before Zane died, however, he told us of a film that he'd made in tandem with Return. This was called Nightless Night, so we make our way down there to see what happened. We finally reached the bottom of the theatre, and there the cult were waiting for us. All of this leading to the final ritual. However, when we entered the room, it was a dead end, until we turn around and exit again, and it was a completely new area. Here we can see the same thing as in the overworld, what we had Saga do earlier in the story. This is a way that Wake can help Saga. Wake tells her that it was here in the overlap that Wake told Saga what's been going on, that Scratch essentially has written a horror story in the form of a third manuscript, one that he can only amend if it's kept on the same genre. Alan's written Saga into the story to be the hero to break through, to save her family. But it's here where, if you remember, Saga starts to ask Alan about her role in this, her family's role, disgusted and confused as to why he's written her family into this story to make it true in reality, especially her daughter. Wake was getting closer now, closer than he's ever been to getting out of here. Parliament Tower is the only place to stop Scratch, fix the ending of the manuscript. It has to work this time. We need to make our way to Parliament Building, so Wake makes his way through the theatre and walks into the hall. But Alan needs to get back on track. Got back outside on the streets, the phone, it started ringing again. This time, however, it couldn't be Zane because he's dead. Wake answered the phone, and it was him on the other side. He was calling from another point in the story, the future. He apologised for what Alan would have had to go through for the rest of this story. He tells Alan he needs to take the photos to the shoebox by the statue in the centre of the courtyard, and place them inside. Alan does exactly this, and our perspective changes back to Saga. Saga needed to catch up with Odin and Tor to see how they used the clicker. She made her way to the nursing home they were both situated in and went to speak with them. However, when we entered Tor's room, it was a mess. Was this a drunken rampage? When we went further on into the home, there was Odin, in a hospital bed, in really bad shape. Both were drunk and watery, so could this be something more sinister that could have happened here? We tried to speak with Odin, but he was in no shape to talk at all. We looked further into what happened here and, well, we concluded that Tor and Odin are not a part of the cult, but the cult think there's something special about them both. But Saga can connect with Odin in her mind place. Odin speaks and tells us that Tor is in danger and that once we help him, he may be able to tell us more. Tor is marked by darkness. It wants to take him and it wants to take Odin. Saga needs to find him before it becomes too late. However, we then ask Odin in the mind place about the clicker. The clicker turns out to be like an amplifier. The clicker has the power to change the story to save Logan, Saga's daughter. If Scratch gets the clicker, however, he can also change the story himself. So we have our objectives. Let's get to it. We work through the wellness center opposite the home looking for Tor. As we make our way through the dark corridors, we finally see Tor. Saga follows him outside, where we see Tor and the nurse, Rose, screaming at one another. Tor was being taken over by the darkness, pulled into the lake. Before we knew it, he was gone. We spoke with the nurse, Rose, about what we'd just seen. We'd all just seen Tor go into the lake and disappear, but she denied it and lied. Why? We used the phrase, Wake has returned to Rose, and for some reason something clicked in her mind. Rose started to completely spill the beans. Here she now started to open up, giving us her keys to everywhere and a page that Alan apparently gave to her to give to Saga. We visit the room of someone named Cynthia. She was one of them from the Dark Place, an elderly lady that would haunt us through this section of the game. She targeted Tor specifically, but why? The Dark Presence is using Cynthia to prevent Saga from talking to Tor. Saga continues on before reaching another overlap within Alan. However, Saga continues on before reaching another overlap with Alan. Saga tells Alan she has the clicker, however Alan has written Logan, her daughter, into the story as we already know. He can't change it now, but Saga has no choice but to continue on. We save Tor from the Dark Place after a load of running around, and we have a couple of questions to ask him. Tor, however, doesn't want to talk in the open, but in our mind place, just so it's more safe and secure. How does he know? Well, Saga is something called a seer. She can see into people's heads, such as Odin and Tor can. We ask Tor about the clicker. Can it save Saga's daughter? Just the clicker isn't enough. Alan needs to rewrite the clicker into the story in order to use it. Saga then returned back to the police building. Scratch. Here we see Agent Estevez. She was inside a closet with a busted leg. Wake's been locked up in a cell downstairs, and Casey, he's safe, and he's in the morgue. The FBC is here because they know about the Shadow. They know about the Dark Place, and essentially these people taken over by the darkness. We need to turn on the lights with the fuse box. When down there, we find Casey and have a bit of a catch-up. Even Casey is affected by this horror story now, stating that Logan, Saga's daughter, has been dead for a long time, and her and her husband have been split up also. We restore the power and find Wake. We confront him there and then about writing Logan into the story, and Saga tells Wake that he must fix this. But something seems really odd about Wake. Wake is constantly asking about the clicker. That's all he's concerned about. Is this really Wake? Because Wake is in the Dark Place too. How could he be in two places at once? Unless this isn't Wake, and this is...
Don't fucking give it to him! Can't kill him! He's a fucking monster, Saga!
Scratch.
There it is! We've been waiting for you, motherfucker! I'm gonna fucking destroy you! Yeah.
Saga goes outside to power 3 light arrays to try and put a stop to Scratch. Finally, it slows him down and disappears, muttering, "Return." So this whole time, this wasn't Wake, it was Scratch? Anyway, we reconvene with Alex and Agent Estevez. Alex tells us that he saw a face in the dark cloud, and it was Alan Wake's, but he wasn't sure at the time what to think of it. Scratch wants the clicker. That's the end goal here. Wake, however, is still in the Dark Place. He's trapped in a loop, but it's making progress. Casey, however, has been deteriorating. Could it be from what he'd seen in the Dark Place? Anyway, we need to come up with a new plan. We need to get the clicker to Alan Wake. He was in possession of it in 2010, and this is how he fixed everything. We ask Tor how we get Wake out of the dark place. The clicker can amplify art, he says. It can be used to change things in the story, such as getting Wake out of the dark place if it's written into the story. Saga will use the clicker to get Wake out of the dark place at Cauldron Lake, but she needs the right piece of art to do this. We tell Agent Estevez what's going on, and well, we make our way to Cauldron Lake. It was on her way that Saga tried to call her husband, and well, the story seemed to have gotten to him too. Saga and David were divorced, Logan dead, but we know that's not true. We know that's only in the story.
Away from me, then you let her. She's dead because of you. And I don't ever want to hear your voice again. Stop calling me.
But it might not have actually happened just yet. So Saga is running out of time. She needs to perform the ritual at Cauldron Lake ASAP to bring back Wake with the clicker and just change the story. When we get to the lake bed, here Odin and Tor are on top of a bus ready to perform a song, which has magical effects. This should start the summoning, and this is the art that Saga needs to use the clicker to get Wake out of the dark place. We fend off a horde of monsters, and then it was time to use the clicker. But it didn't work.
What happened? Why didn't it work? I did everything right. Art to bring him back? Clicker to make it real? So where the fuck is he?
Parliament Tower. It was back.
We then move to the perspective of Alan Wake. The door just opened for us. The clicker, or something, opened this door, changed the story. Wake walks inside and described this time as different. Wake needed to get inside the study. Scratch was inside writing the rest of this horror story. Wake comes across a projector, and it's another video of Alice. It's a video of her basically saying that she can't do this anymore. She's made a decision and needs to make a change. Go from photographer to the subject, from artist to art. Alice Wake took her own life shortly after completing her work on the Dark Place. She will be missed, but will live through her art. What follows are her final photographs.
Alice was dead. Scratch tortured her until she couldn't stand it anymore. Until she broke. And all that time, she thought it was me. Scratch was still here. He hadn't escaped the Dark Place yet. He was scratching my edits out of return. I had seen this before. This was not Scratch. This was me. Caught in a loop. I had stopped myself trying to fix the manuscript. I was the one haunting Alice. It was always me. I killed her. Your friends will meet him when you're gone.
We move back to the perspective of Saga, and there we get more of an explanation. The wake we'd just seen, the one that was killed by the darkness, was the wake that originally brought back at the start of the game. The clicker brought Wake back then, not now. Saga's actions in the future brought Wake back in the past. The summoning, that was Wake. Wake and Scratch aren't different people. Scratch is just inside of Wake's head. Saga leads Wake into the summoning cell, and when inside, instructs Alex to blast it. Saga does exactly this, and, well, Wake seems to be back to normal. But then, Scratch turned into Alex Casey and snatched the clicker out of Saga's hands. Scratch now has the clicker and has taken over Alex Casey's body. The best way to look into this, just to interject here, is that Scratch isn't a person or he isn't an entity as such. Scratch is something that, a piece of darkness that can take over a host. So Alan Wake throughout the story was the host for Scratch. And then obviously once he was blasted out of Alan Wake, he's now gone to Alex Casey, and Alex Casey is the host.
Is cancelled. Today, Bright Falls feels a little less bright.
So we take control of Alan at this point and speak with Estevez. Saga is gone. She was thrown into the lake by Alex Casey that was taken over by Scratch. If she ends up in the dark place, she could never return. Alan was there for 13 years, however, and he still couldn't find a way out until now. If he gets the return manuscript and reads the ending, he could rewrite it so that it's on his way. This is all now down to Alan to fix this. He needs to find the return manuscript and rewrite the ending in a way that gets Saga out of the dark place and that essentially prevents any deaths from happening. Alan made his way back to Bright Falls, stating that he brought Saga into this to fix it, but in reality he might have ruined her life. The real Alex Casey, originally a character in his stories, was brought here too because of that. All the horror originates from Alan. This time, it has to be the final. He has to end it all here and now. Scratch has brought the dark place to Bright Falls. In 2010, Alan dove into it to try and save Alice, his wife. This, however, resulted in him being trapped for 13 whole years. 13 years he was stranded, and now Alice is dead. Alan was willing to take that leap. He knew what he was walking into now. Knew what the dark place was. So, Alan jumped in to try and save Saga, Casey, and the rest of them as well.
Another way to look at it? I had brought the dark place here with me. I never had gotten out. Maybe after this I finally could. It was a fool's hope. I had no choice. I had to do it. That didn't make me any less terrified. Fuck it.
This is Chapter 8, Deerfest.
This is not what I expected.
Alan walks around and makes his way to the top of the road, where he spots the book, Return, fully written, published, with a photo of him under the window of the writing room at the top. However, the people in the festival started to get rowdy, trying to kill Alan when he picked up the book. Alan made his way outside, however, and had one job: get himself to the writer's room and stop this horror story once and for all. Alan eventually found the house with the 2 portholes lit up at the top of the house, almost as if Scratch was up there, typing away at his next revelation. Alan finds his way inside, and suddenly Scratch shows up, crashing through the hallways and running at us with a knife in the body of Alex Casey, ready to get us. We continue to sprint through the halls until Rose opens up the door and lets us into the wellness centre. She thought that Wake had been leaving secret messages for her this entire time, and thankfully she did, because we'd be screwed if not. We make our way upstairs into the attic, as that's where the writer's room looked to be. Alan walks into the writer's room and approached the desk to write a new ending. Return was an eternal deer fest that would keep spreading, plunging the world into Scratch's nightmare. One more chapter would need to be written, a final chapter, one that would end all of this. But then, something in the room. We look further into that vision, and we hear something that Alan said, what Saga said. We need to try and save everyone: Logan, Casey, Alice, the lot. The ending will need to be dark, however, but the more people we save, the better it will be. The scales always need to be balanced. There always needs to be a price to pay. Alan had never seen himself in a vision before, but both Alan and Saga were both writing this ending. This was no longer just Alan's story, but Saga's also. None of this would work without the clicker. Saga, however, woke up in the middle of her mind place. All of her work gone. She was in the dark place, with the darkness playing on her mind. Scratch filling her caseboard with random things. One thing saying that she failed them. This person speaking was another version of Saga. This was a version of Saga taken over by the darkness. One that spouted lies, one that's blaming herself and bringing the death of her daughter into existence. All of these things happening, these were Saga's thoughts throughout the story, but she put them to one side whilst working the case. She needs to find a way out before she's drowned with all of these thoughts, taken over by them. None of this is real. The mind place isn't a real place. Saga needs to get out of here before she's driven insane. However, the darkness is overpowering her, saying there's no way out, that she's stuck here forever. But this is Saga's mind place, her mind, her thoughts. She must be able to find her way out. The answers she needs are here somewhere. Saga searches the room and finds a series of different things, and she starts to fight her way against the other voices in her head. Saga needs to be strong to fight back, and do it for her daughter. She finally opens the door and steps into the dark place.
Saga, wake up.
Saga was found laying face up in the dark place. Chapter 9, Come Home. The payphone was ringing, so Saga approached, and on the other line, it was a woman. She told Saga about the shoebox, one next to the statue. We don't know who this woman is, but if you're asking me, it sounds a lot like Alice. When Saga approached the statue, it was the clicker and a light in the shape of a bullet. This is what Wake was told earlier in the story when he was here as well. The phone suddenly started ringing again. We answer, and it's the woman again. She tells us that Alan's lost, he doesn't have the ending, and needs Saga to help him finish the story. She doesn't tell Saga how to help him, but she might be able to help him in her mind place. So, reach out to Wake, as we are a seer and so is Wake as well, and we ask him about the ending. Wake needs to formulate an ending, but the only issue is that this story is a horror story. The ending must be earned. It needs to be compiled and set up by pre-existing parts, and needs to follow the narrative of the existing story. That's the only way to make it stick, the only way to make it work. In a horror, there's only victims and monsters. There's never really a hero. But if there is a hero, they will need to pay a heavy price. This means that if Saga is the hero, Logan and Casey will most likely be at the forefront of that heavy price to pay. But Wake isn't just satisfied with saving them. Wake wants to make sure everyone in the story is saved and no one dies. Alex Casey is a real person, not just a character in his writing, so technically Wake didn't create him. This could be used to Wake's advantage. If he writes this into the ending of the story, then this won't be a suitable host for Scratch, driving him out of Alex Casey and into Wake again. This is the ending both Wake and Saga decided on, and it's the only thing that they can do right now. Now, with the ending decided upon, we just need to get the clicker to Wake. Saga makes her way through the underground subway and to a part of the map that she can open a portal and get inside. This portal led directly to the writer's room, and there was Alan Wake.
Alan?
Saga, I finished it. The ending we talked about.
I have the clicker and the bullet of light. Let's do this. I have to be the one to do it.
I feel like I've always been on this journey. Okay. It must end here. This darkness. What lies under the surface now shifts. A play of shadows catching my eye, thrusting my face into the water.
He's here.
It's shockingly cold. Past the mirror of the surface. And I will see.
Casey?
The end. Scratch! Now!
A white, searing light of truth that for a flash pierces the shadows and reveals the hidden horror. And in that moment of silence, the whispered message finally heard.
Come on, you motherfucker! Come on! Come on!
What if there's nothing waiting to be revealed? The play of shadows fool us all, subterfuge to get our price of admission. Darkness not as a monster, but as emptiness. We're none the wiser. No answers, no truths. The hero turns to look inside. Is destroyed by what he sees, and is redeemed. Saga said we're both heroes. I'll pay that price. So will she. We are here to kill the monster. I pray nothing comes after this. Nothing but sleep. This is how we win. Is it too easy? What if this is still the dark place? Another dream to wake up from, always coming back to the beginning. The memory of what came before burned away by this terrible realization. Maybe it's a mercy, forgetting. To know nothing when we loop around, back to the...
Is it over? Anderson?
But there was still one more part.
This part is just for you. After the haunting started, I got in touch with an organization that was still looking into what happened in Bright Falls. I went to their offices and something happened there. After I got home, I could suddenly remember everything. I remembered being trapped inside that lake. A dark ocean with echoes of myself. My fears, my photos. Inside a dark tide of madness. The same events and images looping again and again. And then I saw a light. Your light. You dove in just as I swam out. You never drowned. And you're still there reaching out. That is what the haunting is. I can see you because I've been there too. I chose to come back to the dark place. That is why I put on this exhibition. I had to mislead you, so that I could get you to where you needed to be. The only way out of your loop is destruction or ascension, light or dark. And we've covered the destruction part many times over. And we're getting to the ascension bit by bit. Time means nothing here. You'll still need to go through the loop. But I will keep showing you the images you need to see, the light you need to see, until you're ready. Ellen, I think we're getting close.
It's not a loop. It's a spiral.
Well, everyone, that is the story of Alan Wake 2. That was one of the more complex storylines on the channel, and one that I think many are going to struggle to understand, to be honest. But if you made it this far into the video, comment Saga down below, just so I can see the amazing people supporting this video and see how far you guys have got into this video. Look, I'm going to do a couple of videos after this one. This is just a story explain video, as I mentioned, for those at the start that don't really want to buy the game or don't think it's your type of game and that still want to live through the story. I'm going to do a video explaining the ending, summarising the events of the entirety of the game, and then if there's any other videos you guys want me to do that you don't understand, then leave them down below in the comments and I'll try and get around to making them as well and just pump out the content to make this game a little bit more understandable to some people because it's very complex. But let me know your thoughts and opinions down below of Alan Wake 2. Did you enjoy it or not? Leave a like if you did go on and enjoy the video though, guys. It'd be very much appreciated. These videos take so long to make. Subscribe if you guys are brand new as well for plenty more content on the channel. And without further ado, everyone, see you guys next time.